Okay, I'm going to go through a lot of different tabs. You can see I've got a lot of tabs open at the top. And as I go through, really the first part of what I'm trying to do is to just keep driving in or reinforcing this idea, this mindset around research and how you can go into an agency and really begin to dig and find information that can be helpful to you. Excuse me. So this is the DHS homepage. The first thing I just want to talk about is DHS is a Department of Homeland Security. And under it, it has multiple agencies. They call them components. And there's 9 main components I would just want to point out, right? You can see them right here. United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, U.S. Coast Guard, U.S. Custom and Border Protection across the top there. Then you got CISA, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, which is a hidden one I find in DHS. And then you got typical ones like ICE, Secret Service, and TSA. And these 9 components, these 9 agencies, make up the bulk of DHS together with headquarter offices, right? And when you're going in, you want to begin to understand who these people are. You're not just trying to trace opportunities. You're trying to build relationships with these agencies and help them with their mission. You can't possibly help a customer with their mission if you don't understand their mission, their priorities, their challenges, et cetera. And so by doing some of this research, you're going to really be able to be more prepared to build those relationships. The one other thing I wanted to point out is I really like agencies or departments like DHS and HHS because they're huge. They're big enough for you to grow a $50 or $100 million company, over 10 or 20 years or whatever. But you can build a $50 or $100 million company by getting really good at CBP and then expanding that into CISA or FEMA or Coast Guard or something. And it's great because these people tend to work with each other a lot more. That's a really important thing to keep in mind. One tip for you just today is we use something called MindMeister to track our agency research, et cetera, when we're working with our customers. So you can see the data we track here, but components, as an example, we keep it here, and you see it's got attachments and other things. We're able to take strategic plans, things I'm going to show you, and put it in one place. This makes it easier for you to share it with your colleagues. And so it's something you can consider doing is this mind mapping tool. I'm using MindMeister, and we can send you a link on that, but any mind mapping tool is good. I prefer this over CRM tools because CRM tools, they tend to go down this rabbit hole, but I've found using this format, people can find out what they need really fast, and it's got a lot of flexibility. Okay, so let's start going through some of these agencies. The format I'm going to try to follow is to bounce around a couple of different key information. So here, just pointing out, right, this is starting with Citizenship and Immigration Services. In here, one of the first things you can do is to start tracking on their budget and their strategic plans. And I've got them listed, but I'm just trying to show you on each one of these different sites. I'll show you it from a different angle so that you can see sometimes it's hard to find the information, but these guys do a pretty good job at putting it under the About section that you can find it. But when you go in and you start researching some of this information, like their budget, and let me pause here. I'm going to show you a couple of budgets, not for every agency, but I'm going to show you a couple so that if you want to pursue a particular agency within DHS, you know that you can go get this information. CIS or USCIS has this on their site, but most of the DHS agencies have it up on DHS's main site. So you'll just have to dig a little bit to find it. And I'll show you in a minute what I'm talking about. But here, this is the budget overview for Citizenship and Immigration Services. And a couple of things I just want to point out that you want to drop down and track on. The first thing might be something like just understanding their total budget, right? If their total budget here is $6 billion, basically, then beginning to evaluate the budget and go, well, how much of that is actual budget that you can play in? My favorite thing I hate seeing is when people talk about the federal budget as trillions of dollars. No, it's not. Yes, that's how much they waste, right, or spend, but the contracting budget is only about $650 billion, right? So far less than 1 trillion. It's not 3 trillion or 10 trillion. And so keep that in mind that if you see a budget like this, that is $6 billion, you're not going back to your colleagues saying, hey, CIS, it's got $6 billion in budget for us. No, it doesn't. It's got, maybe $1 billion in budget, and probably it's more like a couple of $100 million budget for what you sell. Well, by going through the budget and scrolling through these pages, you can begin to figure it out. So this is a summary, 27 pages And this is a great way to get started to understand the budget. But if you are trying to get millions out of a DHS agency, for example, then take the time to review the budget. Um, and then one other thing, just letting you know that all of these have this. Let me see if I've got this guy open here. But here's their strategic plan, right? So any time you're going in and you're trying to begin to prep and do your research, you want to be looking at their strategic plan and just understanding. And I'm just going to come down here to this one table of contents. I like starting there because it helps me get a high level understanding. Like their second strategic goal for this organization was to invest in their workforce. This is immigration and I already forgot their name, immigration, citizenship and immigration, right? I would think all of their goals are around the immigration and citizenship paths. But one of their goals is workforce. And so I know many people who are on our training, they're in the workforce and training space, executive development, all that stuff. Well, when you look at this, I would be diving into that goal, trying to figure out more about what they see. So this is really good information. Let's move on to ICE. So ICE is Immigration and Custom Enforcement. One is kind of helping immigration, and the other is trying to hold it back. That's my quick little summary of those two. But in here, it's a little harder to find information. I just wanted to point this out, is that as you go along and you try to look at who we are, sometimes you're going to run into roadblocks where it's tougher for you to find information. So I'm coming down here looking for their strategic plans, looking for their budget, and you can't really find any of it, but I can go into the organizational structure. And the reason I wanted to point this out to you, because I can come back to it later and you'll see me share more about ICE. But the reason I'm pointing this out with like no budget, no strategic plan, is it's important when you go talk to a small business professional or any of the people within ICE that you can find, and I'll show you how to find a bunch of people in a minute. But when you go talk to them, you can say, look, I was looking at your website. I could not find anything related to your strategic plan, right? So one thing I might consider that it has, like right here, learn about management and administration. And if I go in here, maybe I'll find the strategic plan. It's certainly where I can start finding out more about the leadership. And this is where you can start digging in, right? You go into the various offices, a ton of information. But the reason I pointed out ICE in particular on how hard it is to find their budget or their strategic plan on their site is that you learn this tip about calling somebody there and saying, I've done my homework. I can't find it. Can you show me? Compare that to the Coast Guard. Here's the Coast Guard site. They do a fantastic job making their information very visible. So here's their strategic plan. Like I talked about, this generally between 25 and 100 pages. Sometimes people have really sophisticated strategies, but if you come down, it's the same thing right here, right? I can begin to look at table of contents and it helps me understand what do I want to see? And the big part I really wanted to point out is that they talk about their strategic framework and you can get down there and begin to understand it, but also their future investments, right? So I would want to go down and explore their future investments. How are they talking about it? Clearly, they're going to talk about boats because the Coast Guard's a big, boat agency. But they're going to talk about their ships, but they're going to talk about other areas where they're investing, these big programs, and you want to explore that. I'm going to come to the budget in a second, but I just want to show you, like I said, other agencies have great industry communication, right? They're sharing a lot of good information. And so not only can you see the budget that's in here, and you can download the whole budget, but I wanted to point out a couple of others that are on bottom left. First off is center bottom is the annual performance report. Make sure you look in there. That one's a gem for finding information about projects they have worked on, how much they accomplished with it, and what they still have to get done. Right. And sometimes they'll talk about the whole teams. This office is leading this effort. It's fantastic. Right. It says, and I always describe this as reading these documents is the same as having a meeting with a senior program manager within your target agency. They're sharing information. And then on the left-hand side, this is when you got a really big coffee, take the time to read some of the justification for agency budgets that you're targeting, because they talk to Congress and they're trying to justify why they should be able to keep a budget or why their budget should be increased. You want to know that because you can begin to weave that into your own language, advocating on their behalf, if you will, through whatever your communication is, whether you're having meetings or you're writing responses to RFIs or RFPs. You can begin to weave in some of the thoughts behind their justification to Congress for the money they're asking for. Here is a different take on the budget, right? You can do all these different ways. I showed you the full budget for some of those agencies. This one here, it's just really quick. It lets me know it's like, all right, $14 billion in budget, and I can come down and see some of the priorities. I already told you that ships have got to be a big priority because that's important. But the cool thing is I can look here and see, remember I said workforce for those of you who are there. Here's modernization. They're modernizing their operational capabilities. This is huge, right? So getting in there and figuring this stuff out. And then down here, if you're in the cybersecurity side of the house, communication, command and communication, you can see major initiatives that they're doing. These bullets, what they do for you when you see 47 million for cyber effect operations or 7 million to transition to modern software. When you see those things, all it's doing is telling you, okay, now go look into the strategic plan, go look into this place, go ask questions about those. So really good information. And I know I'm moving forward in a fire hose. I'm not here to teach you everything about DHS or even one agency, right, in 30 minutes. What I'm trying to teach you and leave with you is reinforcing how you can go into any agency of your choice and begin to find information about them so that you can come in and communicate at their level and to have the conversations that lead to the opportunities you want. So I did Custom and Border Protection now. Here's another one that sits out here is 2021-26 strategic plan. I might have already shared this because I share a lot of strategic plans, but when you come down here, right, this one leads into, let me just pull in here. This one's a little more fun because it actually in the table of contents is laying out the objectives. And if you're not familiar with this, the strategic goals are the big picture of what they're trying to accomplish. And the strategic objectives are almost more of a how, right? We're going to be focusing on targeting and vetting to achieve this goal. But as you start looking, goal number 2, I'm seeing this pattern around workforce, and it begins to make me think, well, maybe these guys are aligning to a presidential priority goal of workforce development for the federal workforce, military and civilian, et cetera, right? So you start seeing this, but where could you fit in? I know there's several people on this training today that are in talent acquisition and workforce development, and I just happen to be picking that, right? I'm working with a customer, 2 customers in our workshop that are on the data side. I'm going to dig into this on their behalf to go look at this and go, well, how can they have a play in there? So then as you're coming forward, you're going to see the same pattern. I'm going to switch to showing you people, but I just wanted to point out, like, I only went halfway through in 15 minutes, right? Showing you this information, but there is a wealth of information. And if you want to get, and I'm just going to click through as I'm talking here, if you want to get millions of dollars coming from these folks in wins, then take the time to go consume their data, download it. Here, I just wanted to point out these 3 documents. It's funny how I can't even make myself move forward. This is a year in review for CISA, for cyber, right? Then there's a strategic plan. And then the 3rd document is stakeholder engagement, which is, CISA has internal stakeholders, but then they have DHS external stakeholders. They have external executive branch stakeholders. They have foreign stakeholders. How are they engaging all their stakeholders? These 3 documents are just gold. And like I said, it's sitting down. That's almost 100 pages of pure gold if you want to support CISA. Okay, so let me jump ahead. There's Secret Service, there's TSA. I just wanted to jump to how can you find people. I want to give you 3 steps that you can do. After you do that research you're going to do, 3 steps you can use to get in the door and start having more meetings. And I believe what I'm showing you on these next 3 tabs will give you almost 100 people that you could call, depending on what you do and what you sell. But certainly if you're in the professional services. So this first page, and just telling you where I got it, I don't want to spend a lot of time, but I'm on DHS's site. And here is doing business with DHS. DHS as a department and its component agencies work really well together. And so the small business professionals work very tightly with headquarters DHS compared to some agencies are completely on their own. And so this one page has most of the people you would want to find in the small business professional arena. But the thing is, as you start looking through, you'll see this different way of talking about it. The small business specialists, and here the way they describe it, are available to discuss specific procurement opportunities. And the reason I like that is because the scenario I gave you this morning about gatekeepers blocking you was a small business specialist saying, just go to Sam, don't talk to me, kind of thing. And it's because their focus is on opportunities. And maybe they were a secondary responsibility small business professional. But then you also have industry liaisons, right? And so these people are promoting 2-way communication, which I call business development. right? We want to hear what the government is saying, and the government sure wants to hear what you say. You're the subject matter expert. You're their trusted advisor. You're the one who has done this in the Army, at Staples, or Amazon, or wherever you've done it commercially and then federally. They want to hear your lessons learned. You are their trusted advisor. And so industry liaisons are great ones to reach out to. Let me scroll down here a little bit more. So here's industry liaisons, by the way. You can go through and just begin to find them on how they're interacting with people. Let me close that one and come back to this one. So the OSDBU staff, right? I tend to tell people to stay away from the OSDBU staff, primarily because their leadership, management, and writing policies focused on the big picture. But these guys are so fantastic that they'll take meetings and do intro meetings and then make introductions to other people within DHS. So Darlene Bullock leads, I think, the DHS. I mean, I know leads DHS. Her and her team are fantastic supports of small business and the value we bring to the mission of DHS. So you can see as you keep coming down, there's more, but I'm just going to go over to this next one, which are prime contractors. So DHS does this job that every agency should mimic, and every large should make it easy for smalls. In DHS, they provide a list of most of the large primes and their points of contact. So AECOM, for example, if you come in here, Sean Ralston, really nice guy. I did an interview with him. Actually, you can find it on my LinkedIn profile in the featured section. Him and a couple other large prime POCs or SBLOs. And he was sharing all sorts of information, but right here, his contact information. And if you dig a little bit, you can actually find his phone number. They're not hard to find him. Amenem's over here. Here's Deborah Newberry. And so look at this list, right? We have a list on our chamber website, govconchamber.com, that is all the small business specialists that are out there and small business professionals in the government. It also has many of the SBLOs. So we take folks like these and get them in there as well. But you can find a complete list. But look at this list. Like, I got a customer that's trying to get farther into Leidos. Now, we actually work with business developers within Leidos. But if I didn't have a place, here's two people's names and numbers. And like I said, this one list is at least 50 people, right? And I'm guessing if they all have, let's just check Boeing as a example. So they all have on average one, but 1.5. You're looking at 50 people just from large primes. Now, by the way, don't go call large primes if you don't have subcontracting business, or go watch anybody's video on when should you call a large. Don't call them early. Call them when you got a lot of good past performance as a business or as a subcontractor in the federal space. But when you're ready, here's all this information. The last one I want to share with you, and this one is a really important one to keep in mind. I talked about just calling people, and primarily you're calling these people the small business liaisons, small business specialists, or the small business liaisons for primes. You're calling them generally for an introduction because you're trying to build a strategic relationship with an agency, or you're trying to build a strategic relationship with a censure. I have a customer who's doing a lot of good work with CICI, but they couldn't get into other places. And so we helped them get in other places. And one of the ways we did that was just guide them down this path of talking to Wayne and reaching out to Wayne and saying, hey, we're doing work in this other location. We've been doing it for 5 years with CICI. Can we work with you? Or can we at least have an intro? And so these people, the agencies and the large primes, are about relationships. But the forecast that DHS puts out, obviously that's about opportunities. And all I wanted to point out was this right here. Well, not all of that, but here's that person's name, right? I got their name, phone number, and email to be able to reach out about an opportunity. And I can begin to develop a relationship with them about this opportunity or future opportunities once I have a quick intro call with them, right? And so this is a vital place for you to go to find a lot of people's information. And I will tell you, like when I go in here, let me just browse the records, just show you really quick. Right here, you can download. See where it says download Excel? You can download this and sort it out. And all of a sudden, you got a list of 100, 200, 300 people that you can begin to start reaching out to. Don't spam them, but strategically reach out to them to build a relationship. So hopefully that made sense there. What I was saying, it's a really fast way of going through DHS as an introduction, but it all begins with research here at the beginning. And so if it all made sense, what I'm saying, do me a favor, put research rocks into the chat. Let me know that you're tracking on that. And just as a recap of what we discussed today, right? We talked about DHS at a high level and the 9 different major components that they have. We talked about their strategic plans and budgets in particular being 2 of the most important documents to get your hands on. And then tips to get started picking up the phone and calling people so that you can start building strategic relationships within DHS. If you're committed to having success within DHS, go download the current strategic plan for your target agency. You can do DHS's as well because that's a higher one. But if you're going after FEMA, for example, go get their strategic plan. If you found this training valuable today, do me a favor, throw thanks into the chat. If you'd like to be part of our BD Accelerator workshop starting in February, send me a message on LinkedIn. This workshop's for companies already doing about $1 million in revenue and want to have help going to the next level. It is a cost and it is a big program, but it will help you have 10x the ROI, the return on investment. Last thing is I want you to remember government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. Part of the process is having fun. I did today. I hope you did. I will see you in the next training.